My name is Rachel Langford, and I spent 11 years loving someone who had already left me. I was halfway into my truck, the bag zipped and heavy with silence, when I heard her friend's voice. Wait, don't leave yet. I didn't tell you everything. The rain had just started. Those first tentative drops that make you wonder if you should grab an umbrella or risk it. I'd chosen to risk it, just like I'd risked everything else for the past decade. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, which surprised me. I thought they'd shake. I thought I'd cry. Instead, I felt nothing but the weight of my wedding ring, suddenly foreign on my finger. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why I was sitting in that truck, in the rain, with Marlene Whitaker running toward me in her house slippers, I need to go back to when love still lived in our house, before it became just another chore Eliza couldn't be bothered with. We met at a book club. Of all places, I was the town librarian. She was the new assistant principal at Madison Springs Elementary. She'd walked in wearing a navy blazer that made her eyes look like storm clouds, carrying a worn copy of Beloved and an opinion about every single chapter. I was captivated, not just by her confidence, but by the way she listened when others spoke, really listened, like their words were precious stones she was collecting. Our first date was at the farmer's market. She bought me sunflowers and held my hand while we wandered between stalls of late summer produce. "I've never done this before," she'd whispered, meaning holding a woman's hand in public. "Is it okay?" I'd squeezed her fingers and bought her honey from the local beekeeper, and we'd sat on a bench eating warm bread and talking until the vendors packed up around us. Those early years were painted in watercolors, soft mornings where we'd drink coffee in comfortable silence, her foot touching mine under the table, road trips to nowhere special, singing off-key to the radio, stopping at every historical marker because I couldn't resist reading them aloud. She'd roll her eyes but lean against the car, listening to me recite facts about Civil War battles or defunct railroad lines, sometimes kissing me mid-sentence just because she could. We bought a house together in our third year, a little Victorian that needed work, with good bones and terrible wallpaper. We spent weekends stripping layers of other people's choices from the walls, finding our own underneath. Eliza was meticulous, measuring twice and cutting once, while I was the one who got paint in my hair and suggested we try that shade of blue that turned out perfect in the dining room. "You make me brave," she told me once, after we'd finally worked up the courage to hold hands at her school's holiday party. Her colleagues had been nothing but kind, though we'd both been terrified. That night, she'd pulled me close in our kitchen and swayed to music only she could hear. I never thought I could have this. Neither had I. Growing up in small-town Wisconsin, being different in any way felt like wearing a target. But with Eliza, I felt seen in the best way, chosen, cherished, even. I don't know when that changed. There wasn't a specific day I could point to and say, "There, that's when she stopped loving me." It was more like erosion. So gradual, you don't notice until the whole cliff face gives way. Maybe it started with the promotion. Eliza became principal when Dr. Hendricks retired, and suddenly she was staying late for school board meetings, bringing work home on weekends. I understood. I was proud of her. I brought her dinner at the office, left encouraging notes in her lunch bag, made sure she had clean clothes for important presentations. That's what partners do. But understanding became accommodation, and accommodation became invisibility. She stopped noticing the dinners, the notes, the way I'd learned to iron her shirts just the way she liked them. When I'd touch her shoulder, she'd shrug it off absently, like brushing away a fly. When I'd suggest date nights, she'd sigh like I'd asked her to climb Everest. "I'm tired. Rachel, can't you see I'm tired?" I could see. I just thought being tired didn't mean being done. The first time she slept on her side of the bed without touching me at all. I told myself it was the stress. The school was implementing new curriculum standards. The budget was tight. She needed space to think. I gave it to her. The first time she forgot our anniversary, I made excuses. Anyone could lose track of dates in October when report cards were due. I cooked her favorite meal anyway, lit candles, waited. She came home at 9, saw the table, and her face fell. "Oh, Rach, I'm sorry. I completely forgot. Can we just order pizza? I can't do this tonight. We ordered pizza. I blew out the candles. We ate in front of the TV, her grading papers between bites, me trying not to cry into my slice. Winter came early that year. I remember because I was always cold, even with the heat on, even under blankets. Eliza complained about the heating bills, said I was being dramatic. Maybe I was. Maybe the cold was coming from inside me, from all the places her love used to warm. I tried harder. That's what I do when things break. I try to fix them. I read relationship books, scheduled us for couples activities, suggested counseling. She laughed at that last one, not kindly. Counseling? Jesus. Rachel, we're not broken. You're just needy lately. Needy. The word lodged in my chest like shrapnel. Was it needy to want your wife to look at you when you spoke? To want her to respond when you said, I love you, instead of just nodding absently? To want to feel like you existed in your own home? I started making myself smaller. Fewer touches, fewer words, fewer needs. I thought if I needed less, she'd have more to give. That's not how it works. Though, the less space I took up, the more she expanded into the absence, until I was pressed against the edges of my own life. Spring arrived, and with it, a wild hope. I planned a surprise getaway to the coast, the same bed and breakfast where we'd celebrated our 5th anniversary, back when she still looked at me like I was a miracle instead of a chore. I arranged for her assistant to clear her schedule, packed our bags, had everything ready. She was annoyed from the start. I have work to do. Rachel, I can't just disappear for a weekend. It's all handled. Please, Eliza, we need this. She came, but she brought her laptop and her phone and her complete disinterest in being there with me while I sat on the beach, hoping she'd join me. She stayed in the room answering emails. When I suggested a walk through town, she said her feet hurt. When I tried to hold her hand at dinner, she pulled away to check her phone. That night, in the room we'd once made love in until dawn, she turned her back to me and watched crime documentaries on her tablet until she fell asleep. I lay there listening to the ocean through the window, wondering when the sound of waves had become more comforting than my wife's breathing. The next morning, I woke early and walked alone on the beach. The fog was thick, muffling everything, and I felt like I could disappear into it, just walk into the gray and become part of the mist. When I got back to the room, Eliza was already dressed, bags packed. Can we go? I have a meeting Monday I need to prep for. We drove home in silence. 4 hours of nothing but road noise and the occasional sigh from Eliza when traffic slowed. I wanted to fill the quiet with something, anything, but every word felt too heavy for the fragile air between us. That night, after she'd gone to bed without saying goodnight, I sat at our kitchen table and made a list. All the ways I'd tried, all the ways I'd failed, all the ways she'd stopped seeing me. The list was longer than I expected. Reading it felt like reading my own autopsy report. Summer blazed in with unusual heat. The library's air conditioning struggled, and I spent my days helping patrons find beach reads and travel guides, recommending escapes I couldn't take. Eliza started going to the gym before work, coming home later, always distracted, always elsewhere. You should come with me, she said once, eyeing me critically. It would be good for you. I'd never been particularly athletic, but I'd never felt shame about my body until I saw it reflected in her gaze. Soft where she was becoming hard, pale where she was tanned from morning runs. I joined a yoga class instead, seeking flexibility in more than just my hamstrings. It was at yoga that I met Carmen, who would become an unexpected lifeline. She was older, wiser, with silver-streaked hair and a laugh that filled rooms. After class one day, she invited me for tea. You look like you're carrying the world, she said, not unkindly. I almost broke down right there in the cafe. Instead, I gave her the practice smile, the everything's fine, that had become my default. She saw right through it. Honey, I've been married 3 times and divorced twice. I know what a lonely marriage looks like. We became friends, not close friends. Eliza wouldn't have liked that, but someone who checked on me, who noticed when I looked extra tired, who reminded me that I existed outside of Eliza's peripheral vision. Fall came like a relief. I've always loved autumn in Wisconsin, the way the leaves turn fire bright before letting go. There's honesty in that kind of ending, a beauty in accepting when something's run its course. I was raking leaves in our backyard when Eliza came out, actually came outside to where I was, and I felt a flutter of hope. "We need to talk," she said. "Hope is such a dangerous thing sometimes." We sat on the porch steps, me still holding the rake like some kind of shield. She looked beautiful in the afternoon light, and I hated myself for still noticing. "I've been thinking," she started, and I knew, the way you know a storm's coming by the pressure in the air, about us, about what we want. "What do you want?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. Then, with the casual cruelty of someone who's already emotionally moved out, she said, "I don't know, but I know I don't want this constant pressure. You're always wanting something from me. Rachel, a touch, a conversation, time together. It's exhausting." "I want connection with my wife. Is that really so exhausting?" She looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time in months, and her eyes were empty of everything I remembered. "I have no desire for intimacy, not with you." The words hung in the air between us like a blade. I waited for her to take them back, to soften them somehow, to remember who we used to be. Instead, she stood up, brushed invisible dirt from her jeans, and went back inside. I sat there until the sun set, still holding the rake, surrounded by fallen leaves. The neighbor's cat came by, rubbed against my legs, and I sobbed into its fur like a madwoman. Even the cat seemed to offer more warmth than my wife had in months. That night, I packed a bag, not dramatically, not with fury or tears, methodically, underwear, jeans, the sweater she'd given me years ago that still smelled faintly of hope, my grandmother's ring, the journal I'd stopped writing in because happiness had become too painful to document and sadness too heavy to record. Eliza was in her office when I came to say, "What? Goodbye? That I loved her? That she'd broken something in me so fundamentally I wasn't sure it could be fixed?" In the end, I said nothing. I stood in the doorway watching her work, waiting to see if she'd notice me leaving. She didn't look up. I was halfway into my truck, the bag zipped and heavy with silence, when I heard her friend's voice. "Wait, don't leave yet. I didn't tell you everything." Marlene Whitaker had been Eliza's best friend since college. She was the maid of honor at our wedding. The one who'd given the speech about how Eliza had finally found someone who understood her sharp edges and loved them anyway. She was standing in our driveway in house slippers and an old cardigan, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Marlene?" I set my bag down, confused. "What are you doing here?" "I came to return a book. Saw you leaving." She glanced at the house, then back at me. "Are you okay?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Do I look okay?" "No," she said simply. "You look like I've felt for the past 2 years, watching this happen." "Watching what happen?" She shifted, uncomfortable. "Can we sit in your truck?" I don't want her to see us talking. That should have been my first clue. We climbed into the cab, windows cracking under the assault of rain that had started falling. Marlene stared at her hands for a long moment before speaking. "I've wanted to tell you for years, every time we all had dinner, every time I saw you trying so hard and her just not, I wanted to shake her, or you, or both of you." "Tell me what, Marlene?" She looked at me then, and her eyes were full of pity. I hate pity. It confirms every worse thought you have about yourself. "She talks about you, when you're not there, has for years." My stomach dropped. "What does she say?" "That you're too emotional, too needy, that you always want something from her, always pushing for more than she can give. Marlene paused, seeming to weigh her words. "She said she misses feeling wanted by other people who don't know her well enough to need things from her." Each word was a separate wound. I'd suspected, of course. You don't live with someone's indifference without wondering what they say when you're not there. But hearing it confirmed was different. It was real now. Witnessed. How long? I managed to ask. Started about 3 years ago. Little comments at first, eye rolls when you'd text her during our lunches, complaints about having to go home to you, then it got worse. Marlene pulled her cardigan tighter. Last month, she said she felt like she was suffocating, that your love was like a weight on her chest. I thought I might throw up, all those nights lying awake, wondering what I'd done wrong, how I could fix us. She'd been telling people I was suffocating her with love, the very thing I'd been rationing, parceling out in smaller and smaller doses to avoid overwhelming her. Why are you telling me this now? Marlene met my eyes. Because you're leaving, and you deserve to know it's not your fault. She stopped loving you and started resenting you for still loving her. I've watched her mock the flowers you send to her office, complain about the lunches you pack, roll her eyes when you say, I love you. You deserve better than someone who treats your love like an inconvenience. I stared through the rain-blurred windshield at the house I'd called home. Did she ever speak of me with love? Even once in the last few years? Marlene's silence was answer enough. Then, quietly, she talked about you like you were dependable furniture, useful, comfortable, but ultimately replaceable. Furniture. I'd become furniture in my own marriage. There's more, Marlene said, and I almost laughed. How can there be more? The gym, her new morning routine. It's not just about exercise. My blood chilled. What do you mean? There's a trainer there. Derek. She talks about him constantly, how he makes her laugh, how he sees her as more than just a principal or a wife, how he... She paused. How he makes her feel young again. Is she having an affair? Not physically. At least, I don't think so. But emotionally? She's been gone for months. The way she lights up when she talks about him, it's how she used to talk about you, remember? Back when she'd call me after your dates, giddy and breathless? I did remember. God, I remembered everything. Every moment when her face would soften at the sight of me, when my name in her mouth sounded like a prayer instead of a burden. She said something last week, Marlene continued. We were having wine, and she'd had one too many. She said, if I were single, Derek would be in trouble. Then she laughed like it was a joke. But Rachel, the look in her eyes, she's already there in her mind. She's just waiting for you to make it easy for her. Everything clicked into place. The gym membership, the new clothes, the way she'd started wearing perfume again. But not for me. She was testing waters, seeing what else was out there, keeping me as a safety net while she decided if she could do better. I should go, Marlene said, before she notices my car. But Rachel, don't go back in there. Whatever you're thinking of saying or doing, don't. She doesn't deserve the chance to make this your fault. She squeezed my hand and slipped out into the rain. I watched her hurry to her car, this unexpected ally in the wreckage of my marriage. Then I started the truck and drove away from the house where I'd been slowly disappearing for years. I'd booked a room at the Riverside Inn, a small place on the edge of town where they didn't ask questions about women checking in alone with red eyes. The clerk, barely out of high school, handed me a key and a tissue box with equal disinterest. The room smelled like industrial lavender and old carpet, but it was mine. No one here needed anything from me. I sat on the bed and waited to fall apart, waited for the tears, the rage, the complete collapse that seemed appropriate for the end of 11 years. Instead, I felt numb, empty, like Eliza had been slowly draining me for so long that there was nothing left to spill. My phone buzzed, a text from her. Where are you? Your car's gone. She'd noticed. It only took her, 2 hours? I stared at the message, then deleted it without responding. Let her wonder. Let her feel a fraction of the absence I'd been drowning in. Another text. Rachel, this is childish. Come home so we can talk. Childish, even now. She was dismissing me. I turned off my phone and ran a bath in the tiny tub. Sinking into water, hot enough to hurt. Physical pain was easier than the emotional kind. It had edges, boundaries. It ended. I stayed in that tub until the water went cold and my skin pruned. Then I put on the old sweater, crawled into the unfamiliar bed, and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere across town, Eliza was probably rolling her eyes, telling herself I was being dramatic, maybe calling Marlene to complain about her needy wife and her theatrical exit. Let her. Morning came whether I wanted it or not. I turned on my phone to find 12 missed calls and a series of increasingly irritated texts. The last one, sent at 2 a.m., simply said, "Fine, we'll do this your way." I didn't know what my way was yet. I only knew it couldn't be hers anymore. The knock on my door came at 8 a.m. sharp. Of course she'd found me. Madison Springs only had 3 hotels. I looked through the peephole to see her standing there in her principal power suit, looking inconvenienced. "I know you're in there, Rachel," the clerk told me. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "What do you want, Eliza?" Her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "What do I want? My wife disappeared in the middle of the night. What do you think I want?" "I think you want to control the narrative. Make this my fault. Paint me as the unstable one who overreacted to one harsh conversation. You did overreact. I said I wasn't feeling intimate, and you packed a bag and left. How is that rational?" I laughed, and it surprised both of us. "You said you had no desire for intimacy with me. Not, 'I'm tired.' Not, 'let's work on this.' You looked at me like I was a stranger asking for spare change and told me you felt nothing. That's not a conversation. Eliza, that's a death announcement." She shifted, uncomfortable. "Good. Can we discuss this inside? The neighbors don't need a show." Concerned about appearances? That tracks. But I stepped aside, let her enter the shabby room. She looked around with barely concealed disgust, and I saw myself through her eyes. Pathetic Rachel, hiding in a cheap motel, probably going to cave and come crawling back. Not this time. "I want you to come home," she said, still standing like she was afraid to touch anything. "We can figure this out. Maybe counseling isn't a terrible idea." "Now you want counseling? After months of treating me like I'm invisible?" "You're not invisible. You're just—" She waved a hand, searching for words. "Intense, always wanting to talk about feelings, always needing reassurance. It's a lot. Rachel, when did loving you become too much?" She sighed, that put-upon sound I'd heard 1,000 times. "See, this is what I mean. Everything's so dramatic with you. Can't we just be married without all the constant emotional processing?" "We haven't been married in years. Eliza, we've been roommates, except roommates usually like each other." Her face hardened. "If that's how you feel, why did you stay?" "Because I loved you. Because I remembered who we used to be. Because I kept hoping you'd remember too." I sat on the bed, suddenly exhausted. "But you don't want to remember. You want me to stop wanting things from you. Fine, I'll stop." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done. I won't be the ghost in your house anymore. The needy wife you complain about to your friends. I won't send flowers you mock or pack lunches you don't want. I won't suffocate you with my terrible, burdensome love anymore." She blinked, caught off guard. "Who told you that? About complaining to friends?" "Does it matter? Is it not true?" Her silence was confirmation enough. "Go home, Eliza. Go to the gym. Flirt with Derek. Live your life without the weight of my love on your chest. I'm setting you free." "I don't want—" She stopped, restructured. "This is ridiculous. You can't just end our marriage because I said one honest thing. You've been saying it for years. With every cold shoulder, every rejected touch, every time you looked through me instead of at me, you just finally used words." She stood there for a moment, this woman I'd built a life with, and I searched her face for any sign of the person who used to dance with me in our kitchen. Nothing. That woman was gone, if she'd ever really existed outside my desperate hope. "Fine," she said finally. "If you want to throw away 11 years over one comment, that's your choice. But don't expect me to beg." "I never expected you to beg. I just wanted you to care." She left without another word. I listened to her heels click down the hallway, heard her car start, drive away. Then I called in sick to work and spent the day staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how love could die in one person while staying painfully alive in another. The next day, I texted Marlene. "There's more, isn't there?" Her response was immediate. "Can you meet me?" We met at her house, a cozy craftsman on the other side of town. She made coffee, strong and bitter, and we sat at her kitchen table like conspirators. "I didn't want to tell you everything yesterday," she began. "It felt like kicking someone who was already down." "I'm still down. Might as well get all the kicks over with." She smiled sadly. "You're stronger than you think, Rachel. But yeah, there's more. About Derek." I gripped my mug. "Tell me." "She's been meeting him outside the gym, coffee after workouts, lunch sometimes. She tells me it's just friendship. But—" Marlene pulled out her phone, scrolled through texts. "She sent me this last week." The message was a photo of Eliza and a man I assumed was Derek, sitting close in what looked like a cafe. They were laughing, and her hand was on his arm. She looked alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Read the caption," Marlene said quietly. "Feeling 25 again. Some people just get you, you know?" I set the phone down carefully, afraid I might throw it. "How long?" "About 6 months. Started as workout tips, became coffee, became whatever this is." "Is she sleeping with him?" "I honestly don't know. She's careful about what she tells me now. Knows I don't approve. But Rachel, even if she hasn't crossed that line yet, she's standing at the edge, looking over." I thought about all the nights she'd come home glowing, claiming endorphins from exercise, the new underwear I'd found in the laundry, fancier than anything she'd worn for me in years, the way she'd started shaving her legs daily again, putting on makeup for the gym. "She's having an affair," I said. "Maybe not with her body yet, but with her heart, her mind. She's already left." Marlene reached across the table, squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner." "Why didn't you?" "Because I kept hoping I was wrong, because you love her so much, and I wanted that to be enough, because I'm a coward who chose my friendship with her over doing the right thing." I appreciated her honesty, even as it stung. "What else should I know?" She hesitated. "Last month, at book club, someone asked about you, why you never come anymore. Eliza said you'd become a homebody, that you preferred your little library world to socializing, made it sound like you were some kind of hermit by choice." I had stopped going to book club. After the third time, Eliza forgot to tell me about the meeting, or the fourth time she seemed embarrassed by my contributions to discussions. I'd gotten the message, but hearing she'd spun it as my choice, my limitation, burned. "She's rewriting history," I said. "She's rewriting you, making you smaller in stories so she doesn't have to feel guilty for outgrowing you, except she hasn't outgrown you. Rachel, she's just—" Marlene searched for words. "She's just cruel and selfish, and I'm starting to hate her for what she's done to you." We sat in silence, two women united by witnessing the slow destruction of a marriage. Then Marlene asked, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Leave, I guess. Divorce. Try to remember who I was before I started disappearing." "Do you need a lawyer? My cousin practices family law." The word family in that context felt ironic. We'd been a family. Eliza and I planned to have children eventually, when she was more settled in her career, another future she'd quietly erased without telling me. "Maybe, yes, I should be practical about this." Marlene gave me the lawyer's number, then hugged me at the door. "You're going to be okay," she said. "Better than okay. You're going to be free." Freedom. It sounded terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. I drove back to the hotel, but the room felt too small, too sad. Instead, I found myself at the library, the one place that still felt like mine. My assistant, Carla, took one look at me and ushered me into my office. "Honey, what happened? You look like death warmed over." I told her, not everything, but enough. She listened with the patience of someone who'd worked in customer service for 30 years, then pulled a bottle of whiskey from her desk drawer. "Emergency supplies," she explained. pouring generous amounts into 2 coffee mugs. Men or women, they can all break your heart. I thought she was different. They always are, until they aren't, she raised her mug. To lesson learned and better days ahead. We drank, and I felt the warmth spread through my chest, temporarily filling the cold spaces. Then I got to work. Amazing how much you can accomplish when your personal life is falling apart. I reorganized the entire young adult section, processed 3 weeks of returns, and updated the community bulletin board. Anything to avoid thinking about the fact that I was 36 years old and starting over. My phone rang around 4. Eliza's principal voice, all authority. Rachel, we need to discuss practical matters. The house, the accounts, the car. When are you coming home? I'm not. Silence. Then, what do you mean you're not? I mean I'm not coming home. You can have the house. I'll get my things when you're at work. This is ridiculous. You can't just abandon our life because you're having some kind of crisis. I'm not having a crisis. I'm having clarity. There's a difference. Rachel. Her voice shifted, became softer. The tone she used with difficult parents. I know things have been hard. I haven't been the best partner lately, but throwing away everything we've built together seems extreme. Can't we talk about this like adults? Adults don't mock their partners to their friends. Adults don't emotionally check out and then blame their spouse for noticing. Adults don't cultivate intimate friendships with gym trainers while their wife sleeps alone. Sharp intake of breath. How did you... It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that it's true. You want to be single. Eliza? Congratulations. You're free. I hung up before she could respond, then blocked her number. It felt like cutting off a limb, but gangrene spreads if you don't. The next few days blurred together. I met with Marlene's cousin, a sharp woman named Patricia who specialized in high-conflict divorces. This isn't high conflict, I told her. I'm not fighting. I just want out. Honey, she said, reviewing my notes about assets and accounts. When one person wants out and the other wants control, that's conflict. Trust me, she's not going to make this easy. She was right. Eliza tried everything. First came the anger. Texts from her work email since I'd blocked her phone. You're being childish and vindictive. We can work this out without lawyers. Then bargaining. I'll go to counseling. We can try again. Don't throw us away. Then threats. If you proceed with this, I'll make sure everyone knows why our marriage failed. Your inability to give me space, your constant emotional demands. Let her. I thought, let everyone know I had the audacity to want my wife to love me. I moved into a small apartment above the flower shop on Main Street. It smelled like roses and had terrible water pressure. But it was mine. No memories lurked in the corners. No ghost of us haunted the hallways. Carmen from yoga helped me move the few things I'd taken from the house. New beginnings, she said, helping me hang curtains. They're terrifying and necessary. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into programming, started a teen writing workshop, organized a genealogy club for seniors, anything to fill the hours, to prove I existed beyond the shadow of a marriage. The patrons noticed something different about me. Mrs. Henderson, who'd been checking out romance novels for 40 years, patted my hand one Tuesday. You look lighter, dear, like you set down something heavy. Had I? Some days it felt like I'd set down a burden. Others, like I'd lost my anchor and was drifting toward the edge of the world. 2 weeks into our separation, Marlene called. She knows I talked to you. She's furious. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to get caught in the middle. Don't apologize. I chose my side. But Rachel, she's spinning this hard, telling everyone you had a breakdown, that you left her out of nowhere, that she tried to save the marriage but you were too unstable. Of course she was. Eliza had always been good at controlling narratives. Principal skill, really. What about Derek? I asked. Still happening, more openly now. She brought him to Murphy's last Friday, introduced him to people as her friend, made sure to mention she was going through a difficult divorce, that her wife had abandoned her. I wanted to feel angry, But all I managed was tired. Let her have her story. People who matter will see through it. But it still stung when I ran into mutual acquaintances who looked at me with pity or judgment. When the invitation to the library fundraiser gala got rescinded because Eliza was on the board and it would be awkward, when I overheard someone at the grocery store whisper, "That's her, the one who left poor Eliza out of the blue." 3 weeks in, I was reading in my apartment when someone knocked. Through the peephole, I saw Eliza, dressed down in jeans and the college sweatshirt I'd bought her years ago. She looked tired, older, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with. I didn't open the door. "Rachel, I know you're there. Please, 5 minutes." I stayed silent. "I miss you," her voice cracked. "I miss us. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. I'll do better. I'll be better." Through the door, I could hear her crying. Real tears or performance. I couldn't tell anymore. I ended things with Derek. It was nothing. Just a stupid crush. "You're my wife. You're the one I chose." The one she chose. Past tense. The one she chose to mock, to neglect, to replace. I sat on my floor, back against the door, and listened to her plead, every word designed to hook me, to reel me back into the cycle. She knew my weaknesses, knew how much I wanted to believe people could change. But people only change when they want to, and Eliza didn't want to change. She just wanted to maintain the status quo, to have her comfortable life and her devoted wife and her freedom to pursue whatever made her feel young and desired. After 10 minutes of knocking and promises, she gave up. "Fine, have it your way, but when you realize what you've thrown away, don't expect me to be waiting." I stayed on the floor until I heard her car leave. Then I called Patricia. "I want to move forward with the divorce, as quickly as possible." The papers were served the next week. Eliza fought it, of course, demanded mediation, counseling, a trial separation instead of divorce. Patricia navigated it all with professional calm while I tried to rebuild a life. I started small, cooking meals for one that didn't feel like failure, going to movies alone without apologizing for taking up space, remembering what music I liked, not just what wouldn't bother Eliza. I'd forgotten I loved jazz until I found myself crying to Nina Simone in my kitchen at 2 a.m. Marlene checked in regularly, bringing coffee and gossip and righteous anger on my behalf. "She's already back with Derek," she told me one afternoon, "posting gym selfies like a college girl. It's embarrassing." "Good for her," I said, and almost meant it. If that's what she needed to feel alive, let her have it. I was too busy learning to breathe again. The divorce negotiations dragged on. Eliza wanted the house, the good car, half my retirement despite making more than me. She wanted to punish me for leaving, for not playing my role in her narrative. Patricia fought back with quiet ferocity. She emotionally abandoned the marriage. We have testimony from her own friend. She's lucky we're not going after her for adultery. In the end, we split things down the middle. I gave her the house I couldn't afford alone anyway. She gave me my grandmother's china she'd always hated. We divided 11 years of accumulated life like splitting a check at dinner. Polite and transactional. The final meeting was at Patricia's office. Eliza came dressed for battle, power suit and perfect makeup. I wore jeans and the sweater she'd given me, not as nostalgia, but as armor, proof that I'd survived her love in its absence. We sat across a conference table like strangers. Patricia reviewed the agreement while Eliza's lawyer, a man who looked bored by the whole proceeding, checked his phone. Then came the signing. Her hand was steady as she wrote her name, ending us with the same efficiency she'd ended our emotional connection. "That's it?" I asked Patricia when they'd gone. "That's it. The decree will be final in 30 days. You're free." Free. There was that word again. I drove home to my flower-scented apartment and waited to feel it. Instead, I felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped out my insides and forgotten to put anything back. But hollow can be filled, slowly, carefully. I began putting new things in the empty spaces. I joined Carmen's book club, full of divorced women who understood the particular grief of loving someone who stopped loving you back. I adopted a cat, a cranky tabby who hated everyone but me. I painted my apartment walls the color of sunrise, something Eliza would have called impractical. 6 weeks after the papers were signed, Marlene slipped a note under my door. Her handwriting, careful and kind. You didn't fail her. She failed to see the best thing she ever had. I kept that note on my refrigerator, reading it every morning until I believed it, until I could look in the mirror and see more than the woman Eliza had found lacking, until I remembered that love wasn't supposed to feel like begging for scraps. One evening, I was at the grocery store when I saw them, Eliza and Derek, shopping together like any couple. She was laughing at something he said, touching his arm the way she used to touch mine. For a moment, the old pain flared, sharp and familiar. Then I watched more closely, saw how she performed her happiness, loud and deliberate, checking to see who was watching, saw how he was already distracted by his phone, giving her the same divided attention she'd given me, saw the future she'd chosen, and it looked exactly like our past, just with a different supporting actor. I left my half-full cart and walked out, not running, not hiding, just choosing not to watch someone else learn what I already knew, that Eliza loved the idea of being loved more than she loved any actual person. That night, I cooked a real dinner, set the table for one with my grandmother's china, lit a candle because I deserved ambiance. Halfway through my meal, I realized I wasn't waiting anymore, not for her to come home, not for her to love me, not for her to see what she'd lost. I was just living, quietly, simply, fully, taking up all the space I needed without apology. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that I knew was her. I saw you today at the store. You looked good, happy. I'm glad. I deleted it without responding. She didn't get to claim credit for my happiness. She didn't get to feel noble about my survival. Later, Carmen called to invite me to a weekend writing retreat. You mentioned you used to journal. Might be good to start again. I don't know what I'd write about. Write about her. Write about you. Write about the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Write until it doesn't hurt anymore. So I did. I drove to a cabin in the woods with a group of women who understood that sometimes you have to tell your story to own it. I wrote about Sunday morning coffee and rejected touches, about becoming invisible in my own home, about the particular cruelty of being told your love is a burden. But I also wrote about after, about learning to cook for one without crying, about the first morning I woke up without reaching for her, about the wild freedom of not having to make myself smaller to fit someone else's comfort. The other women shared their stories too, divorces and deaths, children lost and dreams deferred. We cried together, laughed together, got wine drunk and danced badly to 80s music. I felt more seen in that weekend than I had in years of marriage. When I got home, there was a bouquet on my doorstep. Sunflowers, like the ones from our first date. No card, but I knew. I gave them to my elderly neighbor, who was delighted. Secret admirer? She asked. Ancient history, I said. Fall came again, a full year since that day on the porch, when she'd gutted me with casual precision. I was raking leaves at the library when someone called my name, Eliza, dressed in running clothes, looking somehow both exactly the same and completely different. Hi, she said, uncertain. Hello? You look... She paused. You look like yourself again. I was always myself. You just stopped seeing me. She flinched. I deserved that. What do you want, Eliza? I don't know. To apologize? To explain? To tell you that leaving you was the stupidest thing I've ever done? And Derek? She laughed, bitter. Gone. Turns out he wasn't interested in a real relationship. Just like the attention, the thrill of someone unavailable. Sound familiar? I could have been cruel. Could have pointed out the poetic justice of her getting exactly what she'd given. Instead, I felt only a distant sadness for the women we'd been. I'm sorry you're hurting, I said, meaning it. I'm sorry I hurt you. God, Rachel, I'm so sorry. I threw away the best thing in my life because I was bored, because I wanted to feel 25 again, because I forgot that depth is better than sparkle. You didn't forget. You chose, every day. You chose distance over connection, Novelty over commitment. That's not forgetting. That's deciding. She was crying now, mascara running. Can you ever forgive me? I already have. For my own sake, not yours. But forgiveness doesn't mean resurrection. What we had is dead. Eliza, you killed it slowly, and I finally had the mercy to bury it. I still love you. The words would have meant everything once. Now they just hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had long since burned out. No, I said gently. You love the idea of me, the safety I represented, the unconditional devotion I offered, but you don't love me, the person. If you did, you wouldn't have spent years making me disappear. She stood there, this woman I'd given my 20s and half my 30s to, and I felt the last chain break, not with drama or fanfare, just a quiet release, like setting down a book you finally finished reading. Take care of yourself, I said, and meant it. I went back to raking leaves, and after a moment, I heard her walk away. No dramatic last words, no grand gestures, just the rustle of leaves and the sound of two people who used to be everything to each other becoming strangers again. That night, I met Carmen and the book club women for dinner. We talked about novels and recipes and the absurdity of online dating after 40. I laughed until my sides hurt, surrounded by women who knew my worst moments and chose to celebrate my small victories. You know what I love about you? Carmen said over dessert. You could have become bitter, could have closed yourself off, decided love wasn't worth it. Instead, you're softer now, more open. That takes real courage. I thought about that on the drive home, about how Eliza had accused me of being too soft, too emotional, too much, how I'd tried to harden myself to match her sharp edges, how losing her had actually meant finding myself, complete with all the softness she'd found so burdensome. My apartment smelled like roses and cat fur, and the candle I'd left burning. I fed the cat, made tea, and sat at my small table with my journal. Outside, the world was turning toward winter again, but I felt warm from the inside out. I wrote, Today, my ex-wife told me she still loved me. Once, those words would have rewritten my entire world. Now, they're just sounds, no more meaningful than wind through leaves. I am learning the difference between being loved and being valued, between being held and being treasured, between staying and being chosen, again and again, in all the small moments that make a life. She was right about one thing. I am too much love, too much hope, too much faith in the possibility of connection, but I'd rather be too much than not enough, rather overflow than run dry, rather risk the mess of feeling than the tidiness of indifference. I am 37 years old, I am divorced, I am free, and for the first time in years, that feels like a beginning, not an ending. I closed the journal and sat in the comfortable silence of my own company. Tomorrow, I would wake up and make coffee for one, go to work at a job I loved, come home to a space that reflected only my choices. Maybe I'd date again someday. When the thought didn't exhaust me, maybe I'd travel, write a book, learn to tango. Maybe I'd just continue this quiet rebuilding, brick by brick, until I'd constructed a life that fit me perfectly. But tonight, I was enough, just as I was, too much and not enough and exactly right, all at once. The cat jumped into my lap, purring like a broken motor. I stroked his fur and listened to the night sounds of my small town. Somewhere across Madison Springs, Eliza was probably alone in our old house, surrounded by the furniture of a life she'd systematically emptied of meaning. I hoped she'd find whatever she was looking for. I hoped she'd learn that you can't run from yourself, no matter how fast you go or who you run with. But mostly, I didn't think about her at all. I thought about the library program I was planning for winter, about the book club selection for next month, about the way the light would fall through my windows tomorrow morning, golden and full of possibility. It had taken me 37 years to learn that love shouldn't feel like begging, that marriage shouldn't mean disappearing, that being alone wasn't the same as being lonely, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to fix something that doesn't want to be whole. I was Rachel Langford. I was a librarian. a friend, a cat owner, a journal keeper, a woman who cried at jazz music and laughed too loud at bad jokes. I was someone who loved deeply and felt strongly and refused to apologize for either. I was no longer a wife, but I had never been more myself. And that, it turned out, was everything.